Consider the unsettling possibility that a significant portion of what you perceive as your own deliberate thought process is, in fact, nothing more than an automatic reaction, a pre-programmed performance inherited from external sources, rather than a genuine truth you have consciously embraced. The philosopher Nietzsche posited that the vast majority of individuals navigate their entire existence under the erroneous assumption that they are engaging in independent thought, when, in reality, their mental activity is largely a perpetual cycle of repetition. This incessant repetition manifests in various forms: the reiteration of ingrained fears, the replaying of past experiences, and the persistent echoing of beliefs that were never genuinely cultivated or chosen by the individual. In the course of this unfolding discussion, you will not merely acquire strategies for achieving mental clarity. Instead, you will embark on a journey to uncover the 7 subtle yet undeniable indicators that unequivocally demonstrate your thoughts have never been entirely your own. Once these signs are recognized, their impact will be irreversible, fundamentally altering your perception. By the conclusion of this exploration, your cognitive processes will not simply be altered. You will finally pinpoint the authentic origin point of your individual thought. You navigate the complexities of your daily routine, striving to maintain an outward demeanor of composure. You diligently respond to communications, efficiently complete tasks, and offer pleasant smiles, nods, and assurances of, "I'm fine." Yet an underlying current of unease persists, a subtle dissonance. This is because beneath the surface, your internal monologue is anything but serene. Your thoughts relentlessly circulate in repetitive patterns, replaying unspoken arguments, meticulously dissecting glances, scrutinizing moments of silence, and overanalyzing every subtle pause. This persistent internal activity inevitably leads you to question your own cognitive state. Am I truly thinking, or am I merely reacting to external stimuli? Friedrich Nietzsche famously observed that human beings rarely engage in genuine thought. Rather, they tend to conform, adhering to established habits and amplifying the most dominant opinions within their immediate environment, all while deluding themselves into believing they are exercising independent judgment. If this observation holds true, then it begs the fundamental question: how much of what you label as your personal thought process truly originates from within you? Let us commence our investigation with a phenomenon that is both insidious and subtly perilous. You find yourself alone, meticulously replaying a specific moment in your mind, an endless loop of what you articulated, what others responded, and what you now believe you should have articulated. Your objective is ostensibly to resolve this internal conflict, to pinpoint the perfect, illuminating thought that will finally bring you a sense of tranquility. However, that desired peace remains elusive, precisely because this mental exercise is not genuine thinking. It is instead a form of mental looping. You might characterize this behavior as being analytical, sagacious, or thorough. Yet it is not wisdom. It is fear cloaked in the guise of meticulous preparation. You are in essence rehearsing life rather than actively experiencing it. Your compulsion to meticulously control every conceivable outcome within your mental landscape stems from a deep-seated panic triggered by the unknown. You rationalize this behavior by declaring, "I simply want to be prepared." However, Nietzsche would contend that your true motivation is merely the avoidance of discomfort or pain, and in this pursuit, you inadvertently compromise your own freedom. You engage in excessive planning, relentless questioning, and project your thoughts 10 steps into the future, thereby neglecting to fully inhabit your present moment. Authentic thinking is not characterized by rigidity or mental exhaustion. It is inherently open, fluid, and creative. If your thoughts consistently feel burdensome and heavy, you are not engaging in clear cognition. You are rather managing underlying anxiety, and it is crucial to recognize that this is not a personal failing. You have been conditioned to believe that preparing for the worst-case scenario is a fundamental strategy for survival. However, survival-oriented thinking is distinct from clear, insightful thought. Survival thinking is reactive. Clarity, conversely, is reflective. Therefore, pause and critically evaluate. Do my thoughts genuinely provide profound insight, or do they merely offer fleeting, temporary solace? Because if you consistently experience mental exhaustion after engaging in thinking, you are not effectively problem-solving. You are merely spinning your wheels. Nietzsche would caution that while overthinking can often feel like a noble intellectual pursuit, it frequently serves as a mechanism for the ego to evade confronting reality. You sit in profound silence, and an internal voice begins to articulate a relentless stream of self-criticism. You are inadequate. You have made another error. This is your perpetual pattern. Why can't you simply achieve more? This voice feels intrinsically like your own, yet it is not. It is a voice you have assimilated, perhaps from a parental figure, a former educator, a past romantic relationship, or even from the broader societal narrative. You have internalized their disappointments, absorbed their expectations, and embraced their pressures. Consequently, when you attempt to make a decision, that inherited voice interjects and speaks before your own authentic desires can surface. It casts doubt upon your moments of joy. It reconfigures your genuine aspirations. It transforms the hopeful inquiry of what if into the prohibitive command of don't you dare. Nietzsche believed that we are not born with a pre-existing set of beliefs. Instead, we absorb them from our cultural environment, from religious doctrines, and from the innate human drive for social belonging. He termed this phenomenon the herd mentality, the unconscious tendency of individuals to mimic others in order to avoid standing out or being perceived as different. And this internalized herd voice is remarkably astute. It adopts your own vocal cadence. It utilizes your personal memories. It manages to feel intimately like you, even when its origins are entirely external. Therefore, when a thought arises, pause. Interrogate it. Who instilled this particular way of thinking in me? Whose fear am I inadvertently carrying? Whose shame have I mistakenly adopted as my own? You will likely be astonished by the sheer volume of thoughts that are merely recycled, second-hand emotions, or ancient wounds masquerading as logical reasoning. It is fundamentally impossible to achieve mental clarity when your mind is besieged by voices that are not genuinely yours. It is akin to attempting to compose your own life story, while another entity holds the pen, dictating the narrative. However, here lies the most challenging realization. Occasionally, those very voices that now restrict you once served a protective function. The voice that commanded, do not speak out, the one that advised, do not expect too much, or the one that cautioned, be careful or they will abandon you. These voices were, at an earlier stage, safeguarding you during a time when you lacked the inherent power to protect yourself. But now you possess that power, and what once facilitated your survival is now paradoxically confining your growth and potential. Nietzsche would assert that to truly become your authentic self, you must first metaphorically slay the false gods residing within. Those internal constructs that indoctrinated you into believing silence is a virtue and fear is a form of wisdom. You are not required to harbor animosity towards these voices. Simply acknowledge their presence, express gratitude for their past protective role, and then gently yet resolutely begin to think beyond their limitations. At this juncture, you might experience a peculiar sensation, akin to a dense fog dissipating, or the loosening of a burden you were previously unaware you carried. This is the nascent stage of clarity. It is not a boisterous or dramatic revelation. Rather, it is a quiet, profound experience, much like the very first breath drawn after holding it for an extended period, or the profound realization that a particular thought is, in fact, not your own. However, clarity extends beyond merely purging the old. It also involves meticulously observing what subsequently takes its place, because at times the mind does not genuinely liberate you. It merely constructs new conceptual prisons that bear the superficial resemblance of wisdom, false confidence, a sense of spiritual superiority, or an exaggerated form of hyper-intellectualism. And what is to follow has the potential to shatter that illusion entirely. This is because the subsequent indicators are not merely emotional in nature. They are systemic. They illuminate the ways in which the larger world benefits when you cease to think with genuine clarity and instead begin to conform to a set of rules that you did not personally establish. You have initiated the process of scrutinizing the internal voices within your consciousness. You have recognized how what you previously considered your own thinking might, in reality, be inherited mental static. And in this realization, you are not alone. But now a more profound transformation begins to unfold. You start to become acutely aware of the mechanisms by which you formulate decisions. Not merely what you think, but critically why you arrive at those particular thoughts. And it is precisely at this juncture that the subsequent signs begin to manifest themselves. You awaken feeling fatigued, yet your internal monologue dictates, I should get up. I should be productive. I should be grateful. You absently scroll through your social media feed, experiencing a pang of jealousy, and the familiar internal voice immediately returns. I shouldn't feel this way. I should be happy for them. I should simply move on. Your mind is perpetually inundated with these prescriptive shoulds. But who precisely determine what you should be? Nietzsche famously asserted that morality is, at its core, merely obedience disguised. The majority of individuals abstain from critical thought. They adhere to established norms. They conduct their lives according to principles they have never subjected to scrutiny. These principles originate from familial expectations, religious doctrines, cultural conventions, or the pervasive influence of social media. Consequently, one cultivates politeness as a substitute for genuine honesty. Gratitude supplants authenticity. A state of calmness replaces vibrant vitality. You pursue objectives because they appear desirable, not because they genuinely align with your aspirations. And herein lies the deception. You misinterpret internal compulsion for moral consciousness. You confuse feelings of guilt with ethical integrity. You equate submission with lucidity. However, this is an erroneous perception. Authentic intellectual engagement commences when you cease inquiring, what course of action should I undertake, and instead begin to ponder, what do I unequivocally accept as true, irrespective of universal consensus? This particular inquiry is profoundly unsettling because it threatens to destabilize every structure you have erected upon foundations laid by others. Yet that very trepidation serves as the initial evidence that you are commencing to awaken. You disseminate profound content. You meticulously monitor the number of likes. You acquire an exquisite item. You ponder whether others have observed it. You extend assistance to someone. You experience a void when they neglect to express gratitude. Your cognitive processes no longer remain confined internally. They revolve around the perceptions of others. You do not merely engage in thought, you engage in performance. And Nietzsche discerned this phenomenon with acute clarity. He posited that contemporary individuals do not pursue veracity. They seek affirmation cloaked as truth. Your viewpoints are molded by those you endeavor to impress. Your very identity is filtered through the lens of apprehension. Will I be judged? Will I face rejection? Will I retain my sense of belonging? And thus, gradually, your cognitive faculties become compromised. You publish content deemed inoffensive. You articulate what is socially sanctioned. You refrain from delving too deeply. Because what if the unvarnished truth renders you unlovable? However, genuine contemplation is not invariably agreeable. It is neither pristine, charming, nor commercially viable. It is chaotic. It causes offense. It challenges the prevailing atmosphere of a space rather than seeking to appease it. When you confer upon others the authority to validate your ideas, you forfeit the fortitude to uphold them. Nietzsche termed this slave morality. This occurs when individuals deem something good, not intrinsically, but because others have declared it so. Therefore, the pertinent question is, would you still adhere to your convictions if no one applauded you? If the answer is no, your mind is not liberated. It is leased, and the rental fee is remitted through silence, self-neglect, and subdued resentment. You engage with literature. You immerse yourself in podcasts. You possess the ability to elucidate complex concepts. Nevertheless, nothing substantial in your life truly undergoes transformation. Why? Because you conflate intellectual knowledge with lived experience. You articulate statements such as, I recognize the necessity of establishing boundaries. I understand I merit superior treatment. I acknowledge the need to decelerate. Yet you fail to implement these changes. And this failure does not stem from indolence. It is because knowing is a cerebral function. Understanding is an intrinsic, cellular process. Nietzsche also held the conviction that excessive reading can diminish one's intelligence, as it leads to the accumulation of ideas akin to trophies, rather than grappling with them until they become personally authentic. Authentic thought is not about the reiteration of concepts. It is about their profound integration. It is when you encounter a quotation, and instead of merely assenting, you sit in quiet contemplation, feeling a contraction in your abdomen because the idea suddenly illuminates an aspect within you, a recurring pattern, a latent wound, an inherent contradiction. That is the juncture at which thinking evolves into transformation. However, the majority of people never attain that stage. They superficially absorb ideas like newspaper headlines. They offer perfunctory nods of agreement. They project an image of intellect. But internally, they remain unaltered. The significance lies not in the quantity of your knowledge. It lies in the depth of its assimilation. And until you commence thinking from an internal wellspring, rather than merely imitating popular trends, your mind remains dormant. It is merely reverberating. You have now been presented with 5 indicators. Each one penetrates a little more profoundly. Each one casts illumination upon areas you have previously disregarded, the spaces where your thoughts are not authentically your own. However, what follows is even more substantial, because the subsequent indicators pertain not merely to your cognitive processes, they concern the systemic framework within which you exist, a world that benefits from your sustained state of bewilderment, overstimulation, and uncertainty. Nietzsche stated, "If you gaze long into the abyss also gazes into you." And in these concluding indicators, you will discern the consequences of finally ceasing to stare into the cacophony and beginning to stare back. You have initiated the questioning of the thoughts that occupy your mind. You have recognized that approval, apprehension, and mimicry frequently assume the guise of clarity, but there is an even more unsettling realization you are on the verge of uncovering. Because the final 2 indicators are not exclusively about your personal habits. They concern your environment and how it has been meticulously designed to perpetually hinder clear thought. Let us delve deeper. You spend hours endlessly scrolling. You consume numerous podcasts. You watch intellectually stimulating videos. You believe you are acquiring knowledge, but beneath the surface, an unusual phenomenon is transpiring. You are not becoming more internally tranquil. You are becoming mentally louder. And Nietzsche would contend, that is not thinking. That is an addiction to mental noise. You inhabit a world meticulously crafted to impart the sensation that you are actively engaging in something without ever undertaking anything of genuine substance. You pursue lucidity through the means of stimulation. But stimulation is a pilfer. It deprives you of introspection. It furnishes you with information, but never grants the requisite time to transmute it into profound insight. Nietzsche once remarked, "The greatest events, they are not our loudest, but our stillest hours." However, silence is now a rarity, not because it has vanished, but because you have forgotten how to perceive it. You conflate mental activity with mental clarity, but the brain that is perpetually masticating never truly digests. Authentic thought necessitates pauses. It necessitates periods of boredom. It necessitates prolonged engagement with a concept until it either profoundly alters you or disintegrates entirely. But silence poses a danger in a world characterized by distraction, because in silence, truth emerges. Your unfulfilled needs, your fabricated roles, your self-abandonment. So the world offers you stimulation instead, because stimulation provides a sensation of progress, but it never demands that you undergo actual transformation. You scroll past opportunities for personal healing. You swipe past potential moments of awakening. You maintain a level of busyness sufficient to avoid ever being still. And it is within that stillness that clear thinking truly commences. Not when your screen loads more rapidly, but when your soul articulates itself more deliberately. This represents the most profound injury, because most individuals never acquired the skill of thinking for clarity. They learned to think for the purpose of safety. As children, you perceived the tension pervading the room. You adapted accordingly. You maintained harmony. You became intelligent, courteous, helpful, invisible, whatever was required. You learned to think based on what would protect you from harm, what would ensure their contentment, what version of yourself would garner affection. Thus, your thinking evolved into a protective shield. But armor is not truth, it is a means of defense, and Nietzsche issued a warning. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. However, if the underlying motivation driving your actions is mere survival, then every single idea you formulate is inherently rooted in apprehension. You cease to envision grand possibilities, instead you engage in mere management. You don't make genuine choices, rather you meticulously calculate every move. Your cognitive processes lack genuine clarity. Instead, you are perpetually scanning your environment for potential threats. And it is precisely at this juncture that the predicament intensifies significantly. Societal norms and structures frequently endorse this state of survival-driven behavior. It subtly or overtly communicates messages such as maintain peak efficiency, remain consistently productive, avoid excessive questioning, simply continue progressing. When one is gripped by fear, they become remarkably susceptible to manipulation. You find yourself acquiring possessions you genuinely do not require. You adhere to regulations that ultimately do not serve your best interests. You pursue a definition of success that, while feeling hollow, possesses a comforting familiarity, because familiarity to your primal instincts equates to security, and your brain above all else does not seek liberation. It craves safety above all else. Consequently, you contract, you acquiesce. You begin to mistrust your innate intuition. You suppress your own distinct voice. And each instance where you prioritize immediate comfort over necessary confrontation, you forfeit a fragment of your authentic self. Nevertheless, Nietzsche held a different conviction. He did not believe that individuals were condemned to persist in this state indefinitely. He firmly contended that within every single person resides the inherent capacity to evolve into something far more profound. Not merely a follower nor a passive puppet, but an active creator. A mind that does not solely react to external stimuli, but genuinely perceives. A spirit that does not merely imitate, but forges its own unique trajectory. This profound transformation is not achieved through the accumulation of knowledge alone. It materializes through periods of hardship, through the rigorous process of scrutinizing every belief and identity you once held as your own. And this journey commences when you cease to operate from a survivalist mindset and instead begin to think with the intention of becoming fully actualized. So let us synthesize these concepts. You have just been presented with the 7 indicative signs. Their purpose was not to pass judgment upon you. Their true intention was to offer liberation. You now possess the understanding that the vast majority of your thoughts did not originate within your own consciousness. They were in essence borrowed. Much of what you perceived as clarity was not in fact clarity at all. It was fear, cleverly disguised as rational thought. Most of your habitual thinking patterns did not represent genuine truth. They were merely a performance. However, herein lies the inherent beauty in this entire realization. If your thoughts were not genuinely your own to begin with, then you now have the unparalleled opportunity to consciously determine what they will evolve into. You are not trapped. You are in the process of awakening. Nietzsche never offered solace. He presented confrontation, because it is exclusively when you squarely face your inherited mental frameworks that you can begin the arduous but rewarding task of constructing your authentic one. Therefore, here is your moment for profound introspection. Are you engaging in genuine, independent thought, or are you merely echoing what someone else once deemed to be a safe perspective? If these insights resonated deeply with you, do not depart in silence. Express your thoughts below. Allow your authentic voice to reemerge. Share the specific sign that impacted you most forcefully. And if your desire is to continue cultivating that authentic mind, consider subscribing. Not for my benefit, but for the sake of the version of yourself that is finally prepared to truly see. You have now begun to think with genuine clarity. And once that threshold is crossed, there is no possibility of reverting. If this video provided you with a novel perspective on understanding yourself or assisted you in thinking with greater lucidity than ever before, Do not keep this revelation to yourself. Leave a comment and articulate what resonated and clicked for you. And if you seek more profound, candid content of this nature, subscribe to Thinks. This is merely the genesis of your journey.